Great pleasure right now to welcome to our show today a man who has been covering the economy. Not an easy job. He has a paperback version of his best-selling book just out called In Fed We Trust, Ben Bernanke's War on the Great Panic, and has updated a couple of chapters in it as well. We're joined by the Wall Street Journal economics editor, David Wessel, today. David, thanks for being with us. How are you?
Good, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Good to have a chance to talk to somebody who's been covering this day to day. I know since the hardcover came out, you did an updated chapter in the book. It's a never-ending story, is it?
Yeah, it's actually a much bigger story than I realized when I took on the project. I think we know now that the good news is we avoided a repeat of the Great Depression, and that wasn't so obvious just a couple of years ago. The bad news is that we seem to be on the verge of something you might call the Great Stagnation. We have 9.5% unemployment rate and no prospect of that coming down quickly. We have more people who've been out of work for a full year or more than there are people who live in the city of Los Angeles. So now we're at the point where we're learning just how hard it is to recover when you have a financial heart attack like the one we just had.
Do you think the situation was much worse than maybe most people realize? I know it was covered day to day and in minutia, but do you think it was worse than people realized?
Yes. I don't think people outside understand how close we came to something really catastrophic in the financial system. How much panic there was that week in September 2008 when banks wouldn't even lend to each other because they weren't sure they'd be around the next day, let alone lend to us. And I think that it's one of the reasons why the government gets so criticized for the TARP or the Fed accused of doing this and that is because people don't believe that it was really bad and they had to do extraordinary things, and if they hadn't, we might be in a worse situation. You know, to tell people it could have been worse isn't much comfort, and but it's the truth.
Are banks starting to loosen up now as far as money goes? You hear some small businesses can get loans and others can't. What's the status
right now? I don't think they've loosened up a lot. The evidence is that they aren't raising the barriers anymore, but they haven't begun to lower them. That when you go through a period like this where they learn that they made too many loans, the natural tendency is to pull back and be more cautious. The banks, of course, say that there's less demand for loans from consumers and businesses, and I think one of the big problems we have is that while big companies can borrow by selling bonds on Wall Street, where rates are lower than they've been in 50 years, small businesses that are dependent on banks are having a problem because the banks, particularly community banks, are in some cases crippled by the bad commercial real estate loans they made, and they just can't lend so readily, and these small businesses don't have an alternative. Or maybe the local bank has gone under. A lot of small banks have gone under, or been taken over by a big bank that isn't quite as sympathetic or doesn't understand the peculiarities of, Joe's hardware store. And so I think that it's right that small businesses are having problems. The Congress is toying with doing something to give banks more money if they promise to lend it to small business. There's a lot of attention on this, but it is one of the things that's not yet working normally, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I know down here where I live, David, in Sarasota, several banks have closed, and many others are in trouble of low ratings or no ratings from the Fed. So that is hitting home here in Florida.
Absolutely, and it's particularly hard for small businesses that don't really have another alternative, because you're able to borrow from a small community bank because they kind of know you and trust you. If that bank goes under, the next bank down the road, whether it's a local one or a national one, doesn't know you that well, and they're going to be skeptical, and particularly skeptical because, as you say, the supervisors are looking over their shoulder, and everybody knows that they made bad loans the last time, and they don't want to repeat their mistakes. And if all the banks are too cautious all at once, we'll get right back into the suit.
Was this all caused, though, or say 90% caused by the people flipping houses, getting the great mortgage rates and all that, or was there more to it than that?
No, I think there's more to it. That's definitely part of the problem. But the fact that we had a system where somebody could make a mortgage to someone, these ninja loans, no income, no job, no assets, make that loan, and then sell that loan to some Wall Street firm that then would package it with other lousy loans and sell it to some bank in Germany and wash their hands of it. And then when the person couldn't make the loan in Sarasota or in Encino, California, the pain all fell on the poor schnook in Germany who bought the paper. Well, that's not a very good system. And so we created a financial house of cards that rested on the assumption that housing prices would never fall. Because people thought, well, if the guy doesn't pay the loan, we can always take over the house and sell it. It'll be worth more than the mortgage.
Right.
Well, when that turned out not to be true, suddenly the whole thing came tumbling down. So that is, I think, one root cause. Another is we just borrowed too much money. All of us. The society borrowed too much money. The banks borrowed too much money, didn't have enough capital, and when things turned sour, they ate through their capital in a hurry. They had no capital cushion, and they came on bended knee to the government.
Scary when you hear these stories of people with these enormous credit card debts. I think that's the real scary part there. But
Well, it is.
get out of it.
Yeah, and we just had a report in the Wall Street Journal today that consumer bankruptcies are running 9% above last year's level, and the last year was higher than the year before. I think the good news is that a lot of people are reducing their debts, some of them by paying them down and some of them by walking away from them, and Americans are saving more. That's not great for the sales at the shopping mall next week, but it is good for us in the long term because, as a whole, American people were not saving enough for their own retirements, and now they've learned that you can't count on your house and your 401k always going up. You got to put some money aside out of each paycheck. The savings rate at 6% now, up from roughly zero before the crisis.
You talk about, obviously, Ben Bernanke, who was in charge of trying to turn this around. Did you get any sense of, personally, how he felt about this? Was it eating at him, or did he, in a way, kind of enjoy this challenge?
I think it's one of those things where you'd say, like, this is really interesting, and it would be really fascinating if I weren't involved in it. It's kind of like reading a novel, and you say, wow, this is a great story, but I'm glad I wasn't the actor.
Right.
I think it was frightening. I think the number of things that were thrown at him in rapid succession were overwhelming. I think he was frustrated that here he was trying to save the world economy from a cataclysm, and he got nothing but grief from Congress. His standing in the polls was poorly. He kind of like wants a little bit more respect. But I think when you talk to him now, he, honest to gosh, thinks he did something his predecessors at the Fed failed to do in the 1920s. He took the steps, as unpopular as they were, and with all the bad side effects that we know, that prevented something worse. And I think he's right, and I think he's proud of that, even though he's not the kind of guy who talks about being proud.
It's a lot to ask of anybody, and particularly in a situation like that, you have 10 sides pulling at you at once. So no matter whether you agree with what he did or not, you got to give him credit. He hung in there and he did the best he could, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, David, it's a great pleasure to talk to you. The name of the book is In Fed We Trust, just out in paperback, and I know you kind of keep up to this on your daily job anyway with the Wall Street Journal, but can people get a hold of you through a website? You want to give that out?
Yeah, I have my website is www.infedwetrust.com, and of course, you can always write to me at my capital@wsj.com email address.
Great. David, thanks for being with us, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you.